Hi, everyone. I'm Kenny Webster. Thanks so much for getting connected with us this afternoon. If you're watching us right now on social media, you're at home, whatever you're doing. For those of you driving around the city, my guest in studio right now is Will Moye. Am I saying your name correctly, sir? Moye. Hang on. I can't hear. Let's put a microphone in front of you. Why don't you get that? Hang on a second here. We got to lift that up. That's a flaccid microphone. There. Will Moye. What is the E for?
Well, in some circles it's Moye, but I grew up in Bridget City, Texas, where there is no Moyes. There were just plain old Moyes.
Just Moye, Will Moye.
That's it.
I appreciate that. In Texas, we have a funny way of taking things that are clearly pronounced one way. San Jacinto.
That's right. That's right.
You sure it's not San Jacinto? No, that's San Jacinto right there. It's got a J in it.
Lane, half the Houstonians to say San Felipe or San Felipe. We always, there's always a debate on that.
I know. It's obvious. It's probably Felipe, but we say, anyway, that it is what it is. I am, like a lot of people, I'm a guy that feels like when people use the government to go out and abuse problems, it's exploitative, right? And years ago, we had news stories around the country about a famous incident with coffee being spilled in a woman's lap and an exorbitant amount of money being paid to this person. And there's a lot of debate. People still argue over this case to this day over whether or not that was the right thing to do. And I am told that from mutual friends of mine, you, Will Moye, are an attorney that handles this sort of thing, that you deal in the world of people trying to get a lot of money for something that was seemingly mundane.
I deal with people that are entitled to all the money they're entitled to get from a local jury. I'm actually have a unique background in that I was a defense lawyer on the civil defense side for 25 years. And as of March last year, March 2024, made the decision to frankly stop helping corporate American insurance companies and start helping Texans instead.
Okay, so that the incident I'm talking about, I have friends that are very passionate about this case. It's a famous case involving a woman sitting in a drive-thru, spilling coffee in her lap. And I have friends that'll tell you that woman never should have gotten that much money, and friends that have told me that the case is often misconstrued, that we don't actually understand what happened. Will, what's the truth? Did that woman deserve that much money?
It is absolutely misconstrued. So there were internal temperature metrics, internal requirements and procedures that McDonald's had and was required to follow, both internally for their company and also in the industry. What they did is they handed this poor lady who's in her 70s, I believe, a hot coffee that was at an extreme temp, not from a lawyer's point of view, not from an argument point of view, but from McDonald's point of view, that it reached a level that could scald the skin upon contact immediately.
Okay.
They handed her through the drive-thru window a coffee that was dangerous because they brewed it to the point that it was scalding hot temperature in violation of their internal recommendations, their internal rules and regulations. And it spilled on her and damaged her lady parts in a way that was, frankly, supportive of a settlement. There was an offer to settle the case. There was a lowball offer made and went to a jury, and the jury fixed it.
Okay, it's very important on this radio show that we protect and defend lady parts. That is a principal position that we have here. But I would ask this question because I play white devil's advocate as often as I can. I don't have a choice really. Would she have gotten that much money if it wasn't McDonald's? If it was Will's coffee shop, would there have been that much money?
And there might not have been. The reality is because they were McDonald's, they could actually assess the risk much differently. And I believe it was an $800 demand or $20,000 demand and an $800 offer. So corporate America could have fixed their problem by doing the right thing to this lady that they injured.
So they could have paid a lot less if they didn't try to resist.
Infinitely less.
$800.
Yeah, well, that was the offer. That was essentially to pay her medical bills. The demand was closer to $20,000, and refusing that $20,000 offer, she was left with no other choice but to go try the case that she ended up winning.
There was another one of these cases recently. Let me put this up on the screen here so people can see what we're looking at. We had one of these cases recently with Starbucks. A man was awarded $50 million after Starbucks hot tea caused permanent disfigurement to his penis, groin, and inner thighs. Well, it sounds like a nightmare.
Man parts. Those are man parts? Those are man parts.
We can say penis on top. It's fine. This is KPRC.
With lady parts. I'm going to ride the man parts, lady parts economy there.
That's very classy of you. Why so much money? Have you looked at this case? I mean,
again, it's a case that could have settled. It's a case that mistakes were made. It's a case that accountability wasn't made. And it's a case that someone had to go to trial on because corporate America decided to roll the dice and they lost.
As a libertarian or a liberty Republican, I've always had mixed feelings about this. Because on one hand, I hate to see somebody's business have to pay an insane amount of money that someone else's business wouldn't have had to pay if not for how successful they were. But similarly, these corporations have the money to pay a team of lawyers to go to war with some guy whose testicles got burned by hot coffee, and he doesn't have the kind of ammunition, the legal firepower that they have. Is that fair?
He doesn't. That's the reality of what we do on the plaintiff's side, is that too often it's not a mom and pop scenario. Too often it is a corporate decision with a corporate boardroom, with corporate directors and investors and shareholders that make a decision to take a risk, to try to lowball someone's injury by not being accountable, by not admitting responsibility, and making a decision to say, we will push the little guy around and we'll have an outcome we desire. The difference is they got to eventually face 12 jurors who can see through that more often than not, and that's why cases get tried, and that's why these outcomes occur.
All right, the latest one, if I'm not mistaken, involved chicken nuggets. A girl was awarded $800,000 after taking McDonald's to court over chicken nuggets. I think it was the same thing. She was burned by unreasonably hot chicken nuggets. Happened in 2019. It was a little girl with a Happy Meal. I hate when food is cold, but I guess there's a point where it shouldn't be like a hot coal in your mouth, apparently.
But potentially, I don't know. That is a case I'm unfamiliar with and would be unable to comment on.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, if you don't know, you don't know. The point is these things happen from time to time, and it's got to put the corporation involved in a sticky situation here, because somebody that's getting paid minimum wage is the person responsible for this, and yet at the same time, it's the company that's making the profit, so shouldn't they really be the ones to pay?
No, that's right. And you know, there's no sin in profits, but the problem with these examples, and I'm glad you brought them up because they were appropriate to be presented in this forum where they can be addressed to show they're often different than what society thinks they're ultimately, are.
Right.
Is that... this is what immediately falls into the situation in people's heads of, oh, well, we got to stop, litigation abuse. We have to embrace tort reform as a concept. We got to make things change because it's unfair to Joe American business owner to face the music in front of a jury in Harris County, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, or Bexar County, Texas, or Travis County, Texas, or anywhere else in Texas. Where there could be an outcome that is deemed to be unfair. But the reality is, until you know all the facts,
right,
the outcome's the outcome. Because 12 persons heard the facts, allow them to be presented by a judge who we all elected, and the outcome was the outcome.
All right, so the latest news on this in the world of suing people, suing big corporations and that sort of thing, involves a bill being passed around Texas right now, SB 30, which seeks to cap damages survivors and loved ones have of catastrophic incidents. And apparently this is a bill that is being pushed and supported by a controversial group called Texans for Lawsuit Reform, who I am told the biggest financial supporter of is a guy named Dick Weekly. And we can all just pause for a minute and laugh at the fact that his name is Dick Weekly. Go ahead. I'm going to let the audience take that in. His name's Dick Weekly, guys. I don't get to decide if that's funny. It's objectively funny. And Dick Weekly is actually the guy that was responsible for funding the impeachment campaign against Paxton, they claim, one of the biggest supporters of Dade Phelan, one of the biggest rhinos in the Texas Republican Party. This is always hard for me to wrap my mind around this, but Governor Abbott famously got hit by a tree while he was out jogging, and then years later, he was a big supporter of tort reform, lawsuit reform, and so some people feel like that makes him a hypocrite. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and actually, I think that he's done, an appropriate job and a very purposeful job of letting this be Dan Patrick's show on this tort reform push. I think that he has purposely remained silent on that because I think he does recognize that his physical condition is built on the fact that someone else was negligent. He took that person to court and won a handsome amount of money. That's certainly not life-changing, because if he go back in time, he'd rather have his functional legs than he will be having the recovery he made in a settlement. But I think he's been rather purposeful in avoiding the conversation on tort reform, at least this legislative session.
I can appreciate that. So what is SB 30 and why should people care?
SB 30 is one of Dan Patrick's initiatives. I think he's got 40, 50 initiatives in this term that he wants to see push through to make Texas a better place. I think that there's many things on his top 40 list that will, in fact, do that. I think this is not one of those. This is an anti-lawyer bill. This is an anti-billboard lawyer bill. This is not a pro-Texan bill. This isn't a pro-victim bill. This is a bill that's motivated to, frankly, seek retribution against what people don't like seeing is success of certain plaintiffs' lawyers in this state do quite well because they've had good outcomes. It masquerades as a pro-business bill when, in fact, when you look at the core of it, it is not pro-business and it is very not pro-conservative, which is, again, the uniqueness of what we do is we pick teams. We think this is a conservative position, this is a liberal position. Plaintiffs' lawyers is a liberal position. middle America, business owners, ordinary Texans, a conservative notion. But if you sat and you read the details of the bill, it's the opposite of that. The bill as written is anti-conservative.
I've always had mixed feelings about Dan Patrick because unlike what happens in the Texas House, he gets things done. But at the same time, I mean, some would argue, his policy positions are a little too authoritarian for the modern day grassroots activists, the Republican Party that put him in his position. And at the same time, he gets stuff done in the Senate that would never get accomplished in the House. He'll pass bills that would never see the light of the day in the House. Is SB 30 go anywhere with Dustin Burrows in charge of the Texas House right now?
Yeah, and that's where the showdown's going to be. So it is passed the Senate, came out of Senate committee, actually testified in the Senate committee. There's a House committee hearing under its equivalent 4806, which is, going to be taken up by the Judiciary Committee in a couple weeks and will eventually hit the House floor. I think there's going to be a fair fight on the House floor because I think there's certain House members that realize this is an anti-lawyer bill and not a pro-Texan bill.
All right, so it looks like it's always interesting to see who voted yes on this stuff. Paul Betancourt was a yes on this one. Donna Campbell was a yes. Mays Middleton was a yes. Joan Huffman was a yes. This got a lot of Republican support in the Senate. But in the House, what do you think happens?
I think it's a bigger showdown there. I think that there's some House members that will look at their constituents. I think they're going to answer the phone that their constituents are calling and saying, from a conservative standpoint, what happened to personal accountability? What happened to personal responsibility? What happened to free markets? What happened to liberty?
Yeah.
What happened to all those things that we have embraced, particularly in the last several statewide election cycles? None of this stands for this. This entire kind of reading of this bill is as you mentioned, I'll steal your words, authoritative view of let's press upon the people of this state outcomes that we predetermined for the good of, frankly, TLR and a few other industries lobbying.
I did sound smart when I said that, didn't I?
It's a fantastic word to use.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Will Moye is here. I'm Kenny Webster. If you're watching us streaming live on social media, we'll be back in seconds.